in general. All right. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get the show started. The first topic of today, I wanted to cover some Florida news because I don't know if y'all know this, but when I tell y'all, the local news coverage in Florida is quite possibly the best coverage I have that exists in the country. I don't know what, I guess it's because it's Florida, right? You know, we always got some crazy stuff going on, really. So when I sit down and actually begin to watch random news stories, you're drawn in like it's a damn action movie, because you would think that some of the stuff that happens here can only be true in fiction movies, but unfortunately, once again, this is Florida. And only in Florida can you have something like 25,000 COVID-19 tests be wrong and thrown out, and it doesn't make the national news. But then they'll complain about something regarding DeSantis that isn't even true. So we're like a whole different world when it comes to literally everything. Okay. Now, unfortunately, we're very similar to the rest of the world when it comes to ignorant and racist police officers, because in South Florida, surprise, surprise, that's where I live, and that's also where I got the hell beat out of me. 2 South Florida police officers are now facing investigations for incendiary posts. Fort Lauderdale, Florida. 2 South Florida law enforcement officers are facing investigations by their police departments after they made incendiary comments on their social media platforms. Comments posted on the page of Sergeant David Carlin, a Broward Sheriff's Office deputy, have landed him on restricted duty because this is Broward. They don't suspend officers. This is the same Broward County that manufactured crack to sell to the residents of downtown Broward to gentrify the area. They don't get suspended for being racist. They just get put on restricted duty. At least, I guess that way they can't go out and kill somebody on duty, maybe. I guess. Let's continue. The social media posts say things like, what is privilege? Privilege is wearing $200 sneakers when you've never had a job. Privilege is wearing $300 Beats headphones while living on public assistance. Privilege is the ability to go to a march against and protest against anything that triggers you without worrying about calling out of work. I want y'all to think about that. He says it's privilege to go to protest. Excuse me. It's not a privilege. I don't know if you read the same Constitution I read. First of all, that's a right. And second of all, what work? Idiot. Well, we just got back to work. What are you talking about? But this is what we've been dealing with, right? These type of ignorant people who can go on social media and have their little echo chamber confirm all their biases, but God forbid you ask them to come in front of a camera. You ask them to talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about. They get exposed. But clearly, he is referring to black people. And if we're being frank, he is a dumbass. My opinion. Okay, my opinion. But they always say when people say something stupid, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, though. It's my opinion. You can just get over it if you don't like it. Nah. But you know what privilege is? When all you have to worry about is $200 sneakers and whether or not somebody has them on. All you have to worry about is a $300 pair of Beats and why they have them on. All you have to worry about is someone going in or calling out of work before a protest, because that's what you have to worry about, right? Is making sure your job is secure. As long as your job is secure, everything is good for you, right? Isn't that nice for all my black people, my brown people out there? Isn't it nice to only have to worry about how your bills or someone else's bills get paid? That would be such a relief, ladies and gentlemen. It really would. I would love to not worry about getting pulled over for being black or being fired for being black, which actually basically just happened to one of my good friends, for not being hired for being black. Luckily, I don't have a quote unquote black name. My name is kind of ambiguous, but I know a lot of people who feel like they've been denied opportunities because of their name. There have been multiple studies that have concluded that CEOs were refusing to hire executives for corporations because black people were, quote unquote, more likely to be on drugs. And it turned out that was a lie. It was white people that were more likely, white males specifically, that were more likely to be drug addicts. So there's that. I mean, there's a reason why if you go to Boca Raton, which is in South Florida, it's considered the rehab capital of the world and is almost exclusively a bunch of white people. White guys mostly. So it would be nice to not have to worry about one day explaining to my future child that someone is going to literally hate them, hate their existence because of the color they were born with. It is so nice that you get to worry about somebody else's money and how they spend it. That's just, what would you call that? Oh, that's right. That is what privilege is. People can find $300 beats for $150 if they want to. And if they want to spend their money after living in poverty, they want to treat themselves to something nice every now and then. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'm sure this man spends money he's not supposed to spend all the time for himself. Imagine living in a constant state of anxiety because you're black in a country that rejects blackness. Oh, excuse me. They only reject blackness when it's time to care about black people, when it's time to actually be black. They love our music and our clothes and our movies and even the women, and I mean, they love the guys, but as long as you're not being black or have to deal with the blackness in your face, then they're okay with it. It's crazy. The article goes on to say, another post says, in part, I'm sorry, but if you're still struggling with slavery, I'm still struggling with the Vikings invading England in the 8th century and enslaved my relatives. First of all, that was a literal quote from the tweet, so I know how to talk. He just doesn't know how to type or spell or what past tense and present. Anyway, do y'all know when redlining? Do you know what redlining is, people? Redlining is when basically black people were kept from getting business loans, from taking second mortgages on their houses, from buying houses in certain neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those loans instead were given to Arabs of a lighter hue, Chinese people, has come to be known as the quote-unquote modern minorities in our neighborhoods. Do you know when this practice was technically ended? Early 2000s, technically speaking. And even still, Jim Crow hasn't, as long as the education in this country is funded by 93% of property, 93% by property taxes, then we still haven't even got rid of all the Jim Crow laws. Redlining was literally a Jim Crow law. There was an attempt to end it in the Nixon era, and he fought them every step of the way, but it really didn't end until early 2000s. He's talking about 8th century. Full slavery was in the 19th century. That's only 200 years ago. Depending on how old you are, there are people alive right now whose grandparent was a slave. My mom was born, if my mom would have been a few years younger, just a few years younger. My mom is young. My mom's only 51 years old. If my mom would have been born a few years earlier, she would have experienced segregation full-fledged. Do you understand that? Did the KKK disappear? Didn't the FBI just drop a report saying that white supremacy is present in literally all of the police forces around the country, and we did nothing about it? Did racism just disappear because slavery? Because that's what happened, right? So y'all know that marriage equality got passed 2014-ish, 2013, 2014. Everybody just stopped being homophobic. Did y'all know that? Did y'all know that? Everybody stopped being homophobic the moment marriage equality became legal. Y'all didn't know? Homophobia is dead, y'all. The whole LGBTQ community just stopped marching, y'all. There's nobody. A trans person did not just get beat up the other day. Right? Transphobia is dead. Nah, marriage equality is legal. Transphobia is dead. They can get married whenever they want to. They can have whatever surgeries they want to. It's cool. It's legal. Man. And these people are given badges and guns. The Broward Sheriff's Office said Carlin is a Broward County jail supervisor. Oh, sweet Jesus. And these posts have landed him in the middle of an investigation. He's since been put on restricted duty. The Broward County jail that is predominantly black, filled with black people. And he was put in charge. Another post includes a picture of a seagull on the beach resting on top of a pair of basketball shoes. The text reads, apparently this seagull got his stimulus check. But systemic racism isn't real, y'all. What are y'all talking about? What are y'all protesting about? Deputy Ron Thurston was also put on restricted duty this week, earlier this week in June, after posting about a lack of diversity in the sheriff's office. Think about that, people. Think about that. So, Ron Thurston is actually supported by a pastor around here named Alan Jackson, and he said it was disgusting what that other officer posted, the racist one. But at the same time, the same restricted duty that the racist officer was put on, the officer who said that the department lacked diversity was also put on the same restricted duty. Once again, this is some Florida shit. Clearly. This is not surprising to me because it's Florida. But also, because we live in America, and for some reason everybody has completely forgotten what the hell country we live in. This is America. The only reason that one is on restricted duty and the other one is not on restricted duty, or excuse me, the other one was not put on restricted duty earlier, is because, well, the social media posts didn't get publicized until later. But the guy who was asking for more diversity was put on restricted duty already. Think about that. Think about that, people. That means the leadership within Broward County punished someone for asking for more diversity. That's insanity. Reeve Barker, thank you so much for the super chat. My friend is Palestinian, first generation here. I see firsthand my white privilege when I'm with him. But we can't tell my brother, my mom, and stepfather that there is privilege. They act like we are crazy. Yeah, that's life, man. That's. I know it's crazy. You can literally, and it's crazy because I feel like people get offended if you mention what someone else goes through. Isn't that weird? Like it's because it's almost like it's true, and you don't want to admit that you didn't get everything on your own. That you may have had some advantages over some other people. That you still might have some advantages over some other people. They can't possibly. I can admit it. I can admit as a man, I have a plethora of advantages over women when it comes to the business world and things like that, and being taken seriously. I can even admit that as a lighter skinned black male, I'm not even light skinned, but I'm lighter than a lot of black people. And there's a certain amount of privilege that comes with that while being on camera, while being involved in politics. If I can admit that, like, as a man, why is it so hard for people to admit as white people who have literally had every advantage you could possibly think of? Like, the American dream was possible for them, and there was not going to be anything that stopped them really other than their hard work. They didn't have an entire race who was in power dedicated to stopping them from achieving the quote unquote American dream. That is what white privilege is. And by the way, the American dream nowadays especially means being able to actually live until you're 35 without being worried about being killed for being black or brown. Being able to pursue that dream without being deported, because the visa laws basically favor rich people and white people who come from those countries. So let's move on to the next topic. Baby, you wanna get the air conditioner for me? Oh, yeah, that's right. We got some good news, people. We got some good news. Have y'all been tracking what's been going on? Or not? Well, it's good and bad news. It's not good news because it was necessary, but it is good news because it was done. So Charles Booker of Kentucky is in a race right now against Amy McGrath. Charles Booker was and is still doing well. However, if you've been keeping track of what has been taking place in Kentucky, there has been voter suppression, not unlike what we have seen, in California and some other places. But I say California because I was there whenever students were being kept out of buildings, machines were being taken out of polling places so you had situations where people were limited to 1 or 2 machines for hundreds and hundreds of people. So it looked very similar to California. And honestly, to be honest with you, when I saw what was taking place in Kentucky on behalf of Amy McGrath, I immediately assumed that Charles Booker was going to allow it to happen. Not because I had any personal beef with Charles Booker. I actually like Charles Booker as a candidate. But because of what we have seen historically when it comes to Democrats refusing to call out the establishment Democratic Party when they're literally participating in voter suppression. However, I was pleasantly surprised. I love when people prove me wrong. Can you pull up that tweet for me? So Charles Booker, in response to the massive voting suppression that we saw taking place in Kentucky, filed an injunction. This is someone from his campaign. She's worked for Bernie Sanders' national campaign. I think that she still works for Booker's campaign. At least she's in Kentucky. She's probably assisting with them. But she did work for Bernie Sanders' campaign at the national level as a national field organizer. It says all these voters have been locked outside the Expo Center in Louisville when they're in line at 6 p.m. The Booker campaign has filed an injunction demanding anybody in line or in line to park is able to vote. And if they put out another tweet that said, if you're in line anywhere in Kentucky, stay in line to vote, don't leave. And so, go ahead. And so, it's I don't know how this is going to turn out. Booker has made it clear that he is going to fight Amy McGrath for every single vote. Amy McGrath has also made it clear, and the establishment Democrats have also made it clear, they don't like Booker. And to be quite honest with you people, you know how I feel about people that are not liked by the Democratic establishment. Y'all know how I feel about them. I didn't know how I was indifferent about Booker. I'm like, okay, whatever. You know, he's a cool guy. I like him. I like some of the stuff that he says. I like his policy, I like his platform. But, he's a Democrat, and we'll see. We'll see if he falls to the CBC, the Congressional Black Caucus. But here's what is interesting about this particular story. Y'all notice the narrative that has been going on about Kentucky regarding the voter suppression? Why is it everybody talking like it's the Republicans doing all the voter suppression? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Charles Booker is running as a Democrat. Yes? No? Maybe so? Okay, yes. Correct me if I'm wrong, Amy McGrath is running as a Democrat. Okay. Yes? No? Maybe so? Yes? Okay. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm going for 3 for 3 here. I'm batting 1,000. All right. Aren't they running in a Democratic primary? Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, cool. One more question. Let's see if we can go 4 for 4. Isn't Louisville a Democratic county? Isn't the primary ran by Democrats because it's a Democratic primary? And wouldn't that place the responsibility of voter suppression in this particular case almost squarely on the shoulders of the Democrats? I don't know how many that is now, but that's like 12 for 12. I'm pretty sure all the answers to the question that I just asked you are yes, yes, hell yes, shit yes, 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 yes. I've been seeing tweets from people like AOC, from people like Bernie Sanders, unfortunately, from people that many progressives would consider allies, constantly complaining about how voter suppression is exclusively a Republican issue. And by the way, even Trump has talked to some degree about election rigging, and they pretend like Trump is crazy for talking about election rigging. Now, how am I supposed to think y'all care about election integrity when we're seeing Charles Booker be cheated right in front of our eyes as he is fighting against it? And I appreciate that, by the way, because I basically witnessed Bernie allowing our voices to be silenced this election. That's basically what took place. The money, the time, the effort, and the voices and the votes to be silent. Didn't fight for us. Sorry if that hurts your feelings, but it's a fact. Actually, I'm not sorry if that hurts your feelings. I'm not gonna lie. But I digress. When you see Booker fighting like this against the Democratic establishment, and then the Democrats, even progressive allies, are saying nothing, zero, zilch, nada, about the fact that in blue districts, in a Democratic-run primary, against the man who, which, by the way, if whoever wins this election will be going up against Mitch McConnell, who everybody agrees, damn near half, most Republicans even agree, Mitch McConnell needs to go. And he is actually more vulnerable now than he has been. And so two things are true. He needs to go. It is important that we put somebody up against him who can beat him. But it's also true that whoever wins this particular race is going to have to do the impossible, even though he is more vulnerable. Because you're not just dealing with votes. You go vote, you register to vote, you go vote, your vote counts. That's not how this works anymore. And if you've become naive enough to believe that, if you've been naive, then that's not how it works. I'm sorry to break it to you. You have to be willing to fight election fraud. You have to be able to fight voter suppression. You have to have a message that expands your coalition beyond Democrat, Republican, Black, white. You have to build a populist, human-centered message. And Amy McGrath doesn't have that, nor will she doesn't even pretend to have it. Booker does, from everything I've read about him. And Booker's willing to fight that fight because he has nothing to lose by fighting election integrity, whereas an establishment Democrat absolutely does, because they engage in it too. I mean, look at what we're seeing right now. They engage in election fraud as well. So, it sucks. And by the way, he hasn't lost yet, and he's closing in on Amy McGrath still right now. But they're talking about not reporting the results until June 30th. Come on, bro. We know what that means. We know what that looks like. But the good news is, even though Booker is behind, he's fighting. And that, for me, is worth even more than a victory in times like this. Yeah, we need the victory. We need him to have the title. But let's be real. We know what time it is. We know when you get to Congress, it ain't sweet, unless you are able to build a coalition of progressives. Unfortunately, like when we have not yet seen, because every progressive except for a couple seem to have their own agendas. It's hard to get legislation passed. However, showing that you are a fighter, using that platform in unique ways, like we've seen from some others who are not necessarily in politics anymore, that's important as well. And that's kind of what we need more of right now. We need people to force the conversation just as badly, if not more so, than we need quote unquote votes at this juncture. So now let's talk about some good news. I feel like we haven't had enough of that as of late. I don't know if y'all know this, but Jamal Bowman just beat Elliot Ingles last night. Y'all, when I tell y'all Elliot Ingles is trash, Elliot Ingles is the guy, I don't know if you all recall, who said while he was marching in New York, Man, if this wasn't an election year, I wouldn't even be here right now. Yeah, that guy. That guy. So I'm excited. I'm excited and I'm happy that Jamal won. And I'm going to tell you why. What is the thing that I care about? I mean, other than election integrity, what is the thing that I talk about and preach about more than anything else? The whole reason that I endorsed Tulsi Gabbard, the whole reason that I have a strong disdain for the majority of politicians, and I hyper criticize the majority of politicians because they are wrong on this particular issue. Foreign policy. Policy that is foreign politics, policies of a foreign nature. And this race is extremely interesting because if you all don't know, Ingalls was the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee in Congress. Did y'all know that? Now, he was trash. I don't know how else to put that. I mean, he was so bad on the Israel and Palestine issue that, like Ingalls was, and Bowman comparison was so good that basically they started Israel's little team. You know who I'm talking about, the defenders that come out for them every single time they see a threat to Israel, the same ones that came out against Tulsi Gabbard. They started writing articles that said Bowman is no friend to Israel. And for me, once again, that's a really good sign. And the article goes on to say that Ingalls has always looked out for Israel's best interests, which usually means that it's not in the best interest of Palestinian people. So, you know a little bit about Ingalls' foreign policy. So let's look at a little bit of Jamal's foreign policy. Let me pull it up. There we go. So, progressive foreign policy. All right, let's see what that means. I'm not going to read you all of it, but this is from his website. On the other side, leaders are building a progressive foreign policy vision based on our common humanity and shared aspirations. I believe America's real safety and security comes from ensuring our communities at home are taken care of, and by strengthening our global partnership and alliances through robust diplomacy. That sounds real familiar. Sounds like somebody was taking notes. We must apply our shared values of freedom and dignity to our foreign policy. I love that. Freedom and dignity is important because he actually goes on to explain what he means. We must prioritize diplomacy over war. Bowman, be careful. That type of stuff can get you in trouble in Congress. Be careful now. Diplomacy is a bad word. And we must question how the United States has become the world's policeman and why our government spends more on the military today than it did during the wars in Korea and Vietnam. Vietnam, of course, included a draft. Once again, sound like somebody was taking notes. Colin Radix Carter, thank you very much for the super chat. Not to sound sexist, but would Bowman as a man have an easier time to shake the table in Congress in comparison to AOC as a woman? Well, I'm gonna be honest with you, it hasn't. So double back for a second. AOC actually would have been able to shake Congress much more if she tried. Now, with that being said, as a black man, so he would have an easier time shaking up the Congressional Black Caucus, which could in turn shake up Congress. But understand that as a black person in Congress, if you're progressive, that means you are, unfortunately, in practice against both the Congressional Black Caucus, which includes people like John Lewis and Maxine Waters, who are tied to the establishment, and you are also against the white power structure of Congress, which includes people like Nancy Pelosi. So an easier time, I don't know, but as far as the Congressional Black Caucus is concerned, he would have probably some type of patriarchal influence that otherwise would not be able to, it would be a little bit more difficult for an up and coming new black woman to try to have that type of influence. So, and it's not really sexist to admit that men, unfortunately, have the ability to have a disproportionate influence based off of nothing but the perception of a man versus the perception of a woman. So it's not sexist, it's sad that it's the reality that we live in. It shouldn't be that way. But it's a very good question that you asked. Latoya, thank you very much for the super chat. Thank you for sharing great content as always. Thank you so much for watching the great content. All right, let's look at a little bit more of Bowman's foreign policy. He says that in our district, we need someone to focus not on funding money for bombs and bullets, but schools, healthcare, and jobs. And I 100% believe him because the man used to be a principal. So this seems like something that's literally what he was doing before because he's about to be elected to Congress. He's about to win. This is a blue district. This is Westchester in the Bronx. So, and he's not ashamed to claim he's from Westchester. Sorry. Some people gonna get that joke. Some politicians want to cut our spending on schools, healthcare, and social services, but the U.S. today spends more money on defense spending than the next 7 countries combined. Our nation will spend more than $700 billion on defense spending just this year. That doesn't align with the values of our district, especially when we have so many in need. And then he goes on to just thrash Ingalls. Notably, whenever we went through that issue with Iran, many of you remember we were worried that we were going to go to World War III. Ingalls, who was Bowman's opponent, said that he didn't want to tie up Trump's hands when it came to strikes on Iran. Literally, he was saying, I don't want to tie up Trump's hands when it came to Trump potentially starting World War III. That's what Ingalls basically said. Then he also, he was one of only 16 House Democrats in 2016 to vote against an amendment that blocked the transfer of cluster bombs to Saudi Arabia, which had been used relentlessly by dropping them on the Yemeni civilians. So Bowman is even tracking the Yemen situation pretty closely. It's impressive. He also wants to significantly reduce the Pentagon's budget as per his website. Now, to see him remain this principled in Congress is a whole different thing entirely. We know this. However, fortunately, we didn't see him wake up the next day after winning the nomination, and then the foreign policy side of his website was taken down the next day. Luckily, we haven't seen that happen with him, okay? We've also seen Israel come out avidly against him. They don't like him. They don't like him. That's 2 things for me. I like that. I like 2 things. And I go to your foreign policy. You talking about diplomacy. You talking about dramatically reducing the Pentagon's budget. You're calling out people for basically enabling the Yemeni genocide that we've been seeing. That's my type of candidate. And for me as a black male who is avidly concerned with foreign policy, I am extremely happy to see when other black people are as concerned with foreign policy as domestic policy, because despite popular belief, it is not all that common. It just isn't. So we'll see how he turns out. He's likely going to win because he's running against a Republican, and he's once again in Westchester and the Bronx. He will likely win by a pretty significant margin. He will likely remain an incumbent for as long as he wants to remain an incumbent. With that type of power comes a certain level of responsibility and a certain level of expectation that may be a little bit more harsh than what we'd expect the average Democrat, or excuse me, average progressive. We don't expect the average Democrat to do a damn thing, but we expect progressives to walk the walk. But when you are in a situation like that, you can't only just walk the walk. You got to be braver, because you have no excuse to not be braver. You have to fight harder because you have no reason to not fight harder. Who is going to beat you? You're a principal from this area. Literally, you teach these people's kids, or you've taught their kids and you are in charge of their kids at some point. You smashed Ingalls, and you smashed them, quite frankly, as a black man whose district, Westchester is a very white, Jewish district. Didn't matter. Even with Ingalls, tendency to promote Israeli supremacy. So, I'm gonna be watching you now. You caught my attention. I'm interested to hear what you got to say. You got my attention. You've got my curiosity. Now let's see if you can remain ideologically consistent, or if he's gonna drop the ball like a certain other congressperson we know from Westchester and the Bronx. All right. So that was some good news for today. I want to move on to the next topic because this one irked the hell out of me. It really did. Y'all don't even know. So most of you all know who Steven Crowder is at this point. Steven Crowder is the ignorant douchebag who basically has gotten popular, for lack of a better phrase, being a racist douchebag, but being very public about his racist douchebaggery. Okay. He's also the one who's become kind of infamous in the meme where you see something prove me wrong. It's usually some dumb stuff because he's a dummy. So of course, because of all the protests, somebody like Steven Crowder would take the opportunity to jump on somebody to see if he can get a viral video. And in this particular video, he probably thought he came out looking good here, but he didn't. And he thought that he had somebody who didn't know what they were talking about. But Steve got thoroughly embarrassed. And then he embarrassed himself after he got home. Let's check out the video.
I think that's true. But people can't loot. People can't commit crimes because then that's a violation of other people's rights.
But the police can kill people.
No, they can't. They shouldn't.
But they have been.
They have been. And now people are looting and both are crimes.
No, and now people are rising up. That's what it is. People is rising up. It ain't looting.
Is this rising up?
I'm gonna tell you. Is it justice when the black man got to die for something he ain't even do? Ask that.
No, it's not justice.
No, it's not.
Neither is looting and rioting.
No, I'm gonna tell you what.
Neither
is
shooting innocent people.
I'm gonna tell you what is looting, and I'm gonna tell you what.
Breaking into a store.
I'm gonna tell you who is getting treated unfairly.
Okay.
Black people is getting treated unfairly. We built this country, this world, and yet we still getting treated like we animals. That's what's looting. So stealing our time.
What should happen?
Stealing our time. Stealing our time. We could be spending with our families instead of going out here and working these jobs to pay taxes for the same police officers who don't give a fuck about us. That's why the people are looting, because they are showing us that there is no future. Without no peace, there is no future.
Okay. Is it art? Is this your business?
Thank you, bro. Thank you, bro.
Is this your business?
Thank you, bro.
It's not your business?
The interview is over. I'm gonna start recording. You keep harassing.
Is this a business?
Yeah.
Is it your business?
No. No.
Okay. Let's have someone call the police about to find out if it's a business.
Really, bruh? Really? So you get on, and your response is, let's call the police to figure out if this is someone's business? Oh, that's interesting. Because you thought that you were going to be able to use a looting talking point. That's what everybody loves to do. They're more concerned. They want to be able to own you and say, but looting is bad, right? What about the looting? Bro, I'm going to keep it real with you. I don't really care about the looting. I don't care anymore. I was at first, I'm like, oh, well, it's wrong. I don't have to explain. I shouldn't have to explain to you that most people, 90%, 95% of people don't think looting is a good thing. And if it's at all possible, they would like to see it not happen. I shouldn't have to explain that to you. But clearly I do, because I also have to explain to people the fact that you're more worried about people stealing inanimate objects, stealing material, money. This is quite literally what everybody is referring to when you're talking about privilege. That's it. That's what we're talking about. It is so awesome that you get to be that concerned with Best Buy and Target being broken into. And it's funny because even the police aren't all that concerned with the looting, considering they have barely, if at all, arrested looters in most areas, but have had zero problem arresting the protesters who are asking for reform because the police keep wanting to kill black people with no repercussion. Now, Steven Crowder thought that he was going to be able to use that talking point. And although obviously there was some hyperbole there because it's not like the guy went to damn Harvard, but clearly he went to the School of Hard Knocks because he knew what was up. He said, you know what's looting? Stealing our time to work at these jobs, to pay these taxes, to pay the cops that are killing us in these streets. Whew. And he don't even watch this show, I don't think. I'm impressed. Crowder didn't have a response for that, did he? What's he going to say? Your taxes don't pay police officers. Yeah, they do. They buy the weapons too. Remember, Obama and them gave them military weapons to use on us. So yeah, our taxes buy the weapons too. He was right. Crowder knew it. And so what did he do? Ask someone to call the cops to figure out who's been. No, he asked someone to call the cops basically so they could show up and pop off. He knew what he was doing. Steven Crowder is about as much of a Karen as a Karen could be. That's how Steven Crowder is. And when you ask a question and you get that question answered, your response is, oh, is this your business? Is this your business? Let's call the cops, figure out whose business this is. Really, bro? Really? But he'll be quick to call somebody a snowflake though, right? He'll be quick to call somebody a snowflake. Where was Steven Crowder at when it was time to call out the Democrats and Republicans for the $4 trillion that they just stole from us? Is Steven Crowder as loud, or was he as loud when George Floyd had his neck stepped on or sat on for a damn 8 minutes? Was he as loud about that? What about the fact that we just saw a lynching in California where the family challenged the police department who said that it's a suicide? Well, why is there blood on his shirt then? It's a suicide, don't ask questions. And then guess what happened next? The brother was killed. The brother of the man who was found hanging was killed, less than a week after challenging the notion that Robert Fuller committed suicide. Where is Steven Crowder as loud about that? At the end of the day, you gotta see the way these people, what they focus on is what they care about. You get what I'm saying, people? What they focus on is what they care about. If they cared about cops, police corruption, and the like, right? There's a long list. Then that is what their content would be focused on. That is what he would be. Why do you feel the need to participate in these protests, or why do you feel other people feel the need to participate in these protests? What about the corruption within police departments? The question that you lead with in interviews like this is the question that you care about. See, Steven Crowder will never be killed for being black. He doesn't care. Steven Crowder can relate to having a lot of money and not having to worry about being killed while being a black man. So he can afford to lead with questions like, what about the looting? Don't ask me a question about looting if you're not going to ask me about these cops out here getting... Bro, there are cops... I mean, look at... Listen, all around the country, we see cops being mad because they can't beat up peaceful protesters, bro. And you're asking about looting? Cops are literally upset because they cannot beat up peaceful protest. Have you seen any cop? Please, if you find a link to this article, I would love to see it. Show me a cop that got pissed off because he said, "Man, they not letting me arrest these looters, y'all. They not letting me arrest these looters." Where that at? Y'all seen that video? Glory Jones, thank you very much for the super chat. Crowd is a certified punk ass, and I can't spare much sympathy when clearly no one cares about the looting that was done in Syria, Haiti, Congo, etc. 100% agree. 100%. So, that's weird. Hold up 1 second, y'all. See, we got a sound issue with the video. Oh, I know what to do. Press start, stop really fast.